Do you feel like you're paying too much in taxes every year, or have a relationship with your current CPA where you only meet them once or just before tax time? Look, I want you to know that there is another solution to paying less in taxes and keeping more of your money. Valard Advisors is a leading fractional CFO and CPA firm that specializes in advanced tax strategies for founders, athletes, and entrepreneurs. Valard Advisors can help you navigate the complexity of business taxes and ensure that you're paying the least amount in tax possible. But this is far more than tax preparation. This is strategy. This is really getting into the data-driven decisions that your business needs to make in order to develop a long-term strategy that aligns for your business and personal goals. Whether you're looking to minimize tax liability, maximize your deductions, or plan for your financial future, Valard Advisors has the expertise and experience to help you get there. Do not wait until tax season. Work with professionals today. Contact Valard Advisors to schedule a consultation. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Generation Wealth, your podcast for all things building wealth, from businesses to real estate to investing. We're breaking it down every week for you, and today is no exception. I am so excited for you to listen into this interview. Sean and I were actually talking. We think it's probably one of the best ones we've done. It was just such a great conversation, almost a mini masterclass, if you will, of how to make money in the vertical of wholesaling in real estate investing. Austin has been doing wholesaling since 2014. He has wholesaled over 2,500 houses, does about 1 to 3 a day, has a team of over 70 people that works in office, and he's done about $1 billion, right? No big deal. About $1 billion in real estate by the time he was 28. So he has some rental properties on his own, but wholesaling is his expertise. And so we broke down all of this on the podcast for you, how to get started, how to make money, and some implementation steps that you can take today. And if this isn't for you, it's at least really great to listen to some of the things that we talked about, because towards the end of the conversation, I think we kind of forgot that we were recording a podcast and just were talking. So make sure to listen to the end and let us know if you like this. Tag me on Instagram at Candy Valentino, and Austin is at Austin Zaback. Let's dive into this episode. Welcome to Generation Wealth. I'm Candy Valentino, and I've been building businesses and generating wealth before I could legally order a drink. For more than 2 decades, I've built, scaled, acquired, and exited businesses, all while investing in real estate and building financial freedom. Now I want to help you expand your wealth and give you the proven roadmap to implement today. It doesn't matter if you're a part of Generation X, Generation Y, or Gen Z. It is time to join Generation Wealth. Now let's get started. All right, guys, I am so excited for you to be able to meet Austin. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
I appreciate you having me, Candy.
Oh my gosh, we talked on your podcast about a year ago, I think, when my book was coming out, and we have so many similarities being in the real estate industry and real estate investing, and you started in real estate at a really young age, as did I. So I would love to be able to take this and almost make a little mini masterclass for our listeners. And I know we're going to go into many caveats, but I'd love to talk about your almost 10-year experience in wholesaling. And we say 10 years, guys, but he's only 28. So he's been doing this since he was 18. But can you talk a little bit about the wholesaling industry and why it's so important, maybe for a brand new investor, because you don't need capital to get involved?
Yeah. First of all, I really appreciate you having me. You're absolutely crushing it. And I love watching, you do everything that you do. So it's an honor to be here. I got into wholesaling when I was 18 because I didn't have any money, right? Like I didn't know anything about real estate. I mean, I came from a world of, like, I grew up with my grandparents, in the garage, right? And I started a pool cleaning company when I was 7 or 9 years old. And, so I liked the idea of real estate because I saw HGTV and I saw the people that were killing the game of real estate, but I didn't know anything about real estate, right? So here's an 18-year-old with no money, no credit. I had a hard work ethic. Like, I worked really hard. And so I saw an ad, actually. I remember I was scrolling through Facebook one day, and this was back before Instagram, I think. And the ad was, make money in real estate with no money down, no credit, blah, 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 right? Yeah. And I was like, wow, that sounds cool, And so I clicked the ad. I ended up paying 10 grand. I hired a mentor. It was like, I had like 20 grand in my name at the time, I had made a lot of money as a kid, but I blew all my money. And so I paid like half my net worth to hire a mentor. And I learned wholesaling, right? And wholesaling, for people who don't know, is just the idea of getting a property under contract, right, with a homeowner, a seller, a real estate agent, or whoever, and then just taking that contract and assigning that contract to an end buyer, right? And so you're never actually buying the property,
Right.
But I didn't know that at the time, so the rest is history. Yeah.
So can anyone get into wholesaling?
Anybody.
And so we know what the concept is, but here's where I think people fail. It's in the execution, right? So what if somebody was deciding to listen to you right now and they're like, okay, I've been hearing about this enough. I want to do this. How do I do my first wholesale property?
Yeah.
What would you tell them to do?
Talk to people. We're in the relationship game. I tell my team, I have a big team now. We have 72 people who work for us. And I tell them every day, we're not in the real estate game. We're in the relationship game, right? And if you're not building relationships on a daily basis, you're never going to sell any real estate, And so you've got to talk to people. It's really as simple as that. You could go door knock. You could drive through on your way to work. If somebody's listening and they go to a 9-to-5 job, take a side road through a neighborhood, maybe where there's, some beat up houses or rundown houses, and just go knock on the door and just say, hey, I'm a local investor, looking to buy a property in the area. Have you ever considered selling, and just have a conversation with people, right? And you're going to fail. You're going to fall flat on your face. You're not going to but you're going to get the habit of talking to people and having that conversation with them. And from there, you start watching videos on YouTube and, YouTube University and you figure it out as you go.
Yeah. So I love it. So gritty, right? You got to be gritty. You got to be willing to do the work. That's the one thing about wholesaling is I think with real estate investing, passive income, multifamily, people think, oh, I do it, I set it and forget it. Wholesaling is a little bit more of a grind when you're getting it off the ground. If somebody doesn't want to do door knocking, that's what we see, the signs in the ground, right? That's another strategy where I buy ugly houses. You can do direct mail. Are there any other ways that you found that, is it divorce attorneys, estate attorney relationship building that you found has been successful?
Well, there's a million ways to get a deal. We do a lot of different methodologies. I love working with real estate agents and finding deals right on the MLS. I think a lot of people skip over that and they think that even experienced people, I see it every day. They're like, oh, I can't find a deal on the MLS. I can't find a deal on Zillow. I can't find a deal on Realtor.com. And it's just not true. We do probably 15 deals a month, wholesale right off of the MLS. So. And
expired listings only, or
no, active
too,
yeah, all day long, because you got to think, the buyer, the flipper, right, the people who are out there flipping and the landlords, a lot of the times they don't have the marketing, they don't have the willpower and the marketing ammunition to sit there every day and search for a good deal. They're out in the field, they're flipping their they're in the business of flipping, right, or they're in the business of buy and holding, And so you're just a connector, with wholesaling. And I think that when you go right on the MLS and you just sort and sift through all of the active properties, and obviously you could do what you're talking about too. You could do canceleds and whatever, but actives as well. You're just looking for a good deal and you're negotiating it. You're getting it under contract. You're building that relationship. And then you're just delivering it on a silver platter to the buyer, right? Saying, hey, here. And a lot of times you can get it for 20, 30, 40 grand below what it's listed at, And if you can't get it 20, 30, 40 grand below what it's listed at, then what you can do a lot of times and what is working right now, and obviously the market's always changing, so it might not work in a year. But right now, you can get a deal that it just came on the market. And if you're the first to get it, that in and of itself is valuable. So I've seen, we actually wholesale a lot of the times a deal right off of the MLS for more than it's listed for on the MLS. And we do it every day because we're the first to get the deal. We have the right to the contract.
Wow.
Right? So, the other buyer, the only way that buyer can buy it is from us now.
Wow.
Because we got it first.
And then do you flip it and list it, or do you hold it?
We just wholesale it.
You just wholesale
We just wholesale. Yeah.
So on the
we flip too, but we primarily wholesale.
Got it. So let's just say property on the market right now. Someone on your team, you have 72 employees right now, right? Are they all outsourced or all in-house?
Everybody's in-house.
In-house, okay. So all of those, so they're making calls. They reach out to a seller and says, hey, we think we have a buyer for your home. You negotiate a price, and now you take that contract for whatever it happened to be. We'll round numbers, 500,000. Now you have a pool of investors that then somebody else on the team is reaching out to say, hey, I have a contract for 500,000. Work that side.
Sure, yeah. So you have acquisitions and dispositions, right? So dispositions is responsible for selling the deal. They're actually responsible for building cash buyers every day, talking to cash buyers, And they, our team of guys, they know what buyers they're looking to buy, right? So they have a really good pulse on, okay, this buyer's looking for, 4-bed, 2-bath in 85254 or whatever, and 1980 build, we call that a buy box, right? What are our buyers looking for, And so then when our acquisitions team finds the deal that fits that buy box, then it gets passed along to our other team, right? And they actually end up selling that deal to the cash buyer. But the key thing to remember is you don't have to be a real estate agent to do this. I mean, to find a deal on the MLS or talking to real estate agents, you can have the agent represent you as the investor. So like, you might not have access to the MLS, but you have access to Zillow.
Absolutely.
Right?
Realtor.com.
Realtor.com.
Redfin.
Redfin, Trulia,
Yep.
right? The
All
whole,
of them.
So if you're, let's just say you're watching right now and you don't know anything about anything, you can just go on one of those websites I just mentioned and just start to look at deals, right? Just look at the pictures. Just start to familiarize yourself with a rundown property or a property that looks like it needs a lot of work, right? It looks like you can tell when you see, what properties are going to go to investors typically, right? And just call the agent. Just say, hey, I'm a local investor in the area, and I see you have this house listed on 123 Main. What do you think? What do you think would get the deal done, right? And just have that conversation. But that agent will represent you, right? They'll do the contract, they'll write the paperwork up, they'll do everything, and then all you got to do is go find the buyer.
Yeah.
In a lot of cases, if you're brand new, you can sell a deal through a real estate agent or another wholesaler. So, people who are brand new, I think, overcomplicate it, right? Like, I've got to build this big list of cash buyers, or I've got to know everybody. Or you could just call somebody like me or the other, 200 or 500 big wholesalers in the industry, or thousands probably, and they've got the buyers already. So just partner up with them. You say, hey, I've got this good deal. I've got it under contract. I have the exclusive on it. Can you help me sell it? We'll split the profit 50-50 or whatever, So I think people, just to your point a little while ago, like, people don't take action,
Yeah, they think it's too hard. Or what about they need the 25 steps to take the first step? But just take the first step. Like, go get the contract. And then when you get the contract, figure out the next step. And I love how you said that. Like, it is a very inclusive industry, like even more so than business. I feel there's a little bit more competition in business. But in real estate, it does feel more of like like, I know if I had a deal tomorrow, I could call you, I could call Pace, like I could call a bunch of people and say, hey, I don't have buyers for this, but this is a great deal. And people are like, heck yeah, let's do it.
All day.
So I love that. And I think what's cool is anytime you have a market for something, if you just have someone that's willing to work hard enough for it, you can go make money in any industry. And what I love about real estate is the barrier of entry is so low, but people overcomplicate getting started.
It's almost too low.
Exactly, right? I mean? Yeah, because
Yeah.
it's like, it's so funny with human behavior and our psychology. If we don't work hard for it, if we don't spend a lot for it, it's like we don't value it.
Yeah.
But there's so much potential out there. Now, let's fast forward to someone that's doing this. Maybe they're doing a few, like, what are a few common mistakes that you see people make in the wholesale space, the vertical of real estate?
So many different mistakes. I think, one of the biggest things I see a lot is people try to do it all too soon, right? So, like, I own a retail real estate team. I own a wholesaling company. We flip houses. We have a title company. We do a lot of different things, right? But I think people start trying to do all of that
But
way
you didn't
too
start
soon.
with all
I
those.
did not, right?
That's right.
Well, I did at one point. I failed. And then
Yeah.
I went back to ground zero, and then I rebuilt it again, right? But, I think that people need to focus on one thing. Right? Like, get good at one thing. It takes time to really see the fruit of your labor, right? And I think that people very, very soon in the game, they get the shiny object syndrome of like, and they're on social media and they see what this guy's doing or they see what you're doing or I'm doing, and they want to do all of this different stuff. And then the thing that they initially started with, actually suffers as a result of that, right? I think that's a huge mistake. I think another mistake is that people ride the roller coaster of real estate, right? And what I mean by that is a lot of times when you get into real estate, no matter what vertical you're in, right? Whether you're syndicating multifamily or you're buying commercial, you're a real estate agent, you're representing luxury home buyers and sellers, you're wholesaling, whatever. In the beginning, you're doing it all. Right? Like you're prospecting, you're the transaction coordinator, you're everything, right? You're wearing every hat in that company. And when you wear every hat, you're riding the roller coaster, right? Because you go get a deal, and then now I take my foot off the gas of getting the next deal so I can sell the deal that I currently have, right? And then by the time that deal sells, I'm like, oh, my pipeline is dry again. So you have to figure out a way to get out of that eventually, like as soon as you can. I think you do that by saving money and investing into yourself, and eventually, you hire the right people and you build a team. I think, at least get a person or two on your team as soon as you can. But obviously, you have to be able to afford it. So you have to wear all the hats in the beginning.
Yeah, you got to do it all in the beginning. But I think I commonly see that in every industry. People try to do it all themselves too long, and they don't see the value because they think, oh, I can't afford to pay for somebody. But you're already paying for someone. You're just paying yourself to do it. So you're probably overpaying for that position because you could then go get more deals and have somebody else do the rest of that fulfillment side.
Is that because people struggle to delegate, in your opinion?
Yes, it's because so most people think that the skill set it takes to build a business is the same one to scale or exit a company, and they're all different skill sets. So that growth period of people being able to go out and be really salesy and gritty and get it all is totally different than having the leadership mentality to build and delegate people to two people and build processes.
So interesting.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. So that's why it's like you can see pretty close. There's a lot of entrepreneurs, and I think entrepreneurs and investors will get better when they can just identify their strengths, not try to do all of the things that they hear, double down on what they are good at, and find and align partnerships and people around you to do the other stuff. It's like a partnership I'm in. She is the artist. She's the talent. She is the service provider. She's so good at it. All of the other stuff is like, oh my gosh, her brain just wants to shut off. Yeah. I don't want to do all the work. I don't want to do the service, but building the business and growing it, that's what is my zone.
The true yin and yang.
Exactly. So when you can align and just be like, I'm not great at what she does, she's not great at what I do. Let's see, can we make this great together? And I think that's really awesome.
So powerful.
Yeah. And so you had mentioned, obviously on a few things with the wholesale stuff of some of the mistakes that they made. And you mentioned that you lost it all at one point. And I think people don't talk about this because they think that real estate or any market or any industry is just a straight up line. And it's certainly not. I think there's a lot of wisdom in not only doing it to be where you are now, but to also there is a lot of wisdom and discernment when you lose things. Can you share maybe if you lost it all, if tomorrow you woke up, the team, the wholesale side, the real estate side, your programs, everything was gone, and you had to start everything from scratch tomorrow, no connections, nothing. You only get to retain the knowledge in your mind. What would you do to start building it all back?
I love the question, first of all. One of my earliest mentors told me, Austin, the 6 inches between your ears is the most expensive and valuable real estate you'll ever own.
So good. Who said that?
I can't even remember.
So good,
one of my first mentors, though. I had a handful in the beginning. If I think of it,
it takes an army.
but I think that, first of all, I would, in a weird way, I'd almost be excited. I think sometimes we overcomplicate things as we become more and more successful. And I think that failure a lot of times is disguised as actually a valuable asset that you have, right? And, I've failed many times in my life. Well, at least like the world would call it a failure. And to me, it was just a massive learning lesson, right? And a lot of times it catapulted me to that next level, and it's kind of like a slingshot, right? You pull that slingshot back, a lot of times, I'm a man of faith, God will pull that slingshot back, right? And what you don't realize is you're getting pulled back, but then he lets go of the slingshot, right? And you catapult. And I think that what I would probably do is I would go, to answer your question, I have failed many times, actually, more than once. I've started a lot of companies that haven't worked out. I've started about 10 companies, actually, in my career, and half of them didn't work, and I think what I would do, I would for sure get into real estate. I love real estate, right? I think real estate, you look at real estate, what is the stat? 80% of all millionaires, self-made millionaires did it through real estate.
It's actually 77% because it's in the book.
There you go.
Yeah.
So that's a massive number, right?
Yep.
So you look at, the Donald Trumps of the majority of the wealthy people that you see, they made their money in real estate, right? Yep. So I love the game of real estate. I think everybody should learn it and know it at some point. And I think even somebody who's totally happy working a 9 to 5 should learn the game of real estate because it's better than a 401k and all that junk, I think, if you invest in real estate, right? But I would get in and I would do one thing, and I would probably do wholesaling in the beginning. And the reason I say that is because it is a cash cow. I've wholesaled 2,500 deals in the last 10 years. And now we wholesale 2 or 3 houses a day. I mean, we're on a roll right now, right? And it's just a cash cow. It's an unbelievable cash cow. We can make a ridiculous amount of money wholesaling, right? And then you can take that revenue when you do that consistently enough, you can take that revenue and you can go invest it into long-term rentals.
Yep.
And a lot of probably what you do now, the bigger type of real estate, right? The big flip, the big long-term, rental projects and stuff. And then you can create that true wealth, right? So I think I would do that, and I think that I just wouldn't allow myself to get shiny object syndrome. I think one other thing that I would do is I would build a personal brand. I think that in 2023 and beyond, we're all marketers. I just listened on the way over here, your podcast with like David Boyd, right?
Yeah.
And, I always talk about like, whether you're a dentist or a doctor or a lawyer, whether you're Judge Anthony, whoever you are, we all have to market ourselves, right? So if we're not marketing a product or a service, we're marketing ourselves. Why should I go to your dentistry? Why should I go to your why should I hire you as a lawyer, right? And so I think we all need to be better marketers, and we need to showcase, what we do every day and everything like that. I would have done that sooner.
Yeah.
Because I didn't really take social media as seriously as I probably should have in the very beginning. So just those two things. Focus on one thing in business. Preferably for me, it would be wholesaling. And then build a personal brand.
I love it. And I think the interesting part about a personal brand is, building a personal brand and trying to monetize it without trying to direct it to something else is harder and takes longer. We were just talking about that off camera, just about how long it can take to run ads and build an audience and all of that and how expensive it is. But if you're doing it alongside of another business, like a lawyer's, a firm, an accounting's office, a real estate office, and you can differentiate yourself in the market, my opinion, I think that's where it's really valuable. How long does it take to build like a Kardashian brand? If it even is possible, it takes a long time. So I think that's a long-term play, but I think the instant play is differentiating yourself in whatever industry, whatever vertical that you're in that industry, and you can really start to stack gains more quickly.
For sure. There's no question that people with a personal brand make more money and have more success than people who don't have one. There's just no question about it. I think we officially live in that world now, right? Like where, it doesn't matter if you're a stay-at-home mom, like it doesn't matter what you do. You can't exclude yourself from being somebody who needs to take it seriously, right? And I think that it's just the reality of it. Now, social media is a double-edged sword. You can get sucked in too, right? You got to be careful. But I think at the very least, post a day. Like just put yourself out there, right? I see so many people that like have a social media and they have like a private account. And I can never wrap my brain around that. Pace Morby said something a couple months ago that really hit me hard. He said, and I was listening to him and I want to give him all the credit for saying it, but he said that he was in an audience and he looked at everybody, right? And he said, you all have a personal brand. He said, every one of you right now is marketing yourself and you all have a personal brand and I know you for what you're posting. And he said, and all of you guys that aren't posting, that's your brand. He said, I know you for being inconsistent. I know you for not taking it seriously. Like when I look at your profile, I'm looking at the fact that you don't take it seriously and you're not being consistent, and that is your brand.
Yeah.
Right. And so whether we realize it or not, we all have a brand.
It's so true. I had a website prior to, and we weren't really doing anything. So it was just kind of like living there. I was still in the last exit. I was kind of like figuring out what I wanted to do in this space. And something very similar, someone said to me, and I cannot remember who it was, but he was like, Candy, it would be better to just take it down. And I was like, what do you mean? He goes, if I jump on, oh my gosh, it's driving me crazy. I can't think of who that was. He goes, if I jump over there and see that you're not active, that you've had one blog post from a year ago, he goes, it's going to devalue your brand. And it's so funny because in business, I would have said that exact same thing. But here I thought in my mind, oh, well, it's just like a placeholder. It sunk. I totally pulled it down. As soon as it hit me, I'm like, you're absolutely right. I pulled it down and we didn't have a personal brand website for over a year because I was like, we're going to do this with excellence. And I mean, you see my posts, like it's not perfect, but 80%, I always try to say strive at least 80% towards excellence so that it's when people know and they interact with the brand, they know what they're getting based off of that.
And it'll never be perfect.
No, and if you wait for it to be perfect, then you'll never do anything.
Agreed.
And so what is the saying? Perfection is the enemy of progress. So
it really is.
I would rather go for progress. But, we talked a lot about your failures and just even your journey. And I think it's important for people to know the person behind the process and the progress that you've made because life wasn't always sunshine and rainbows for you. And it wasn't like you were born successful. You grew up in your grandparents' garage. Can you talk a little bit about your journey and kind of what was the tipping point? I find everybody that came from nothing and have built something on their own, there was like a tipping point, a moment for them that they said no more, and I'm going to create something different. Can you share a little bit about that?
Sure, yeah. Yeah, you know, I grew up in the garage. My parents are still around, but they were divorced and they didn't want to be parents really that bad. And I have a good relationship with them now, you know, but, I started cleaning pools at a really young age. And by the time I was probably 12 or 13, I was making $3 or $4 a month, you know, cash. That was a lot of money.
That's
like when
a lot
you're
of money
12,
back then.
you know, so, 30 grand a year or whatever. Right. But, I learned a lot. I failed a lot as a kid too. You know, I went and bought everything you could imagine. Like, so my grandparents, they let me do whatever I want pretty much. And so, I had every toy that literally quads, dirt bikes, airsoft guns, paintball guns. I mean, I was just a kid, right? Blowing 30 grand a year. By the time I was like 15, I probably blew $150,000, on just everything you could imagine, right? And, so I think that I failed a lot as a kid. I struggled a lot. I had a couple knee surgeries. I had a lot of health stuff kind of when I was a kid. And I got into, a little bit of drugs, and I did some things that I shouldn't have done probably, but I learned a lot, and I think that at a certain point, it just dawned on me like that I wanted to be successful. I think I always knew that as a kid, right? Like I always had an incredibly hard work ethic, And when I went and I was about 15 or 16, I got a bunch of jobs because the pool company I was over it. I'd been doing it for 4 years or whatever, 5 years probably. And so I started working kind of in like corporate America, I guess you could say, right? And I hated my life, and I worked probably, 15 jobs over the course of a couple of years. And I never got fired, but I would just like get hired, work there for a few months. I would get bored and I'd leave, right? I hate it, And I realized that I hated somebody else putting a value on me, right? The idea that like my value is going to be determined by another human being, and that, I have to show up at a certain time and I have to do certain things. And if I don't do them, then my future is in somebody else's hands, And I think a lot of people in corporate America think they have job security. And I think that some people in corporate America will tell me, like, as an entrepreneur, maybe you, like, oh, there's no job security being an entrepreneur. I'm like, there's no job security being you, because at least with me, I can control, I know what's going on, right? I can see it coming. If something bad's about to happen, 99% of the time I saw it coming, right? Yeah. But if you're employed by somebody, a lot of the times it can be very difficult, right? Because you can't see it coming. Yeah. I'm not saying that being an employee is bad. I have a lot of employees, and entrepreneurs wouldn't be able to thrive without incredible employees. Yeah, period, right? And incredible employees wouldn't be able to thrive without incredible entrepreneurs. So it is a very, mutually beneficial relationship. But I think that to answer your question, and I apologize, I got sick and tired of being sick and tired as a kid. I got in the world of, I joined multi-level marketing is what happened. And it freaking, a light bulb went off. I got in my first multi-level marketing company, and I started hanging out with Bob Proctor and Les Brown and Tony Robbins. Like, I was backstage with a lot of these guys, Eric Thomas, John C. Maxwell, you name them, right? And I started reading Napoleon Hill and all the Dale Carnegie, right? And I just 180'd. I mean, like, I cut off all my friends. I stopped doing drugs. And not to say that I didn't fail after that, but sure. I 180'd and I never looked back, Yeah. Again, a lot of failure happened after that too. But after I made that decision, then it was like, I was all in, I knew that in that moment that I was going to be unemployed for the rest of my life.
Yeah. Well, it's so interesting too, because people that say job security, for me, if something's going to fail or not work out, I at least know that was because of me, right? Because if we really are true entrepreneurs and you're a true leader, everything that fails or goes wrong comes back to your doing. Regardless if it was a bad partnership, it was still you that chose to get in the partnership, right? If sales didn't come in because you didn't see something happening in the industry, it still rolls up to the leader. But at least I know that was my fault. I would rather do something and have the repercussion of my action that it was my fault than somebody else control my destiny. And I think for me, that's what's so freeing about entrepreneurship is even in all the twists and turns, if something goes wrong, I can look back and say, did I give it my all? Or was something else distracting me that this failed? Or did I just bite off more than I could chew? Because that happens too sometimes. But so that's what I love. And I think multi-level marketing because there's so much negativity about it. But I think if we look at it as, what is it, like maybe only 10% or so actually make real money in it. But the other 90%, what they really got is free personal development.
For sure.
And that's the way I've always said. Like, I've heard so many people that are like, oh, network marketing. I'm like, you know what, though? Those 90% of people that never make anything, the investment that they're getting in their brains that they would have had to go pay for to sit at a seminar or be at some event, like they're getting that for free in the hopes that maybe they sell a product. So I just think sometimes if we switch our view of something, obviously it had massive benefit from you, even though you're not working in it now.
Sure. I highly encourage multi-level marketing, actually. I think that the idea that like it's a pyramid is like, everything's a pyramid.
Right. It truly is. Yeah.
So I highly encourage it for exactly the reason that you just described. Mm-hmm. I can't even believe, I don't think I've ever heard anybody else say it the way you said it. I've been saying that for a long time. I'm like, get into MLM just for the personal development, because you're going to be around incredible leadership, right? There's one thing that I've seen in every MLM company is the leaders are typically incredible. Mm-hmm. Like the leaders are like the real deal a lot of the times, and if you can get around that leadership, especially, if you're just trying to get started and want to, do it for a year.
Yeah.
Even if your intention is just to like do it and sell a couple of products and move on, like not a big deal. I didn't make a lot of money in network marketing, but what I learned was, life-changing.
Yeah, and I think oftentimes too, like because people have, I don't know if I should do this. And I always say, look, if everything went south, like I don't have any MLM experience. It wasn't part of my journey. But if everything went south, what do you have left at the end? It costs you, some of them have like a minimum, right? Like $150 a month or something. Could you get that same level of attention, leadership, personal development, motivation by spending $150 a month to be in some other membership?
I doubt it.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
So if you just look at it like that and create relationships, like not everything that every relationship, every person, every business, it's not all for the same thing. Sometimes we meet somebody that we become deep friends with. Sometimes it's just for a period of time. And so that's all my whole thing is if people just flip that to say, if I don't make any money and I just use some good products every single month and I just get myself involved in personal development, what's the worst that could happen? And if it's still a net positive to your life, give it a shot.
Agreed.
Like, what's the worst thing you can do is stop. Yeah. Like, it's not a big deal. Like, people overcomplicate decisions, but I love this. And I love what you're doing because you are now taking the knowledge that you've developed, the discernment that you have from being in multiple facets of real estate, and you're teaching other people how to do it, but not just in like a click and play course. Like, you're actually teaching them live. Can you talk a little bit about the program that you just developed for wholesaling?
Yeah. So we just launched a really cool education program. First, time I've ever really done this. I mean, I've coached people here and there over the years, but nothing like what we just put together. We put together a program. It's called Flippin' Simple, and it's flippin' simple, and it's awesome. I mean, we do live coaching. We have a bunch of students already. We just launched it, and I think it'll change the game of wholesaling. I think that there's a lot of inaccurate information out there, and I always struggled with that, right? Like over the last 5 years, I thought multiple times about starting an education program, and the only reason that I didn't was because I've seen so many gurus over the years that teach and they preach and they teach, but they don't do, right?
Oh,
and
yes.
They're teaching outdated crap.
Yep.
Because wholesaling is always changing. Like if, wholesaling will be completely different in a year from now than it is right now, right? The fundamentals will be the same, but the methodology in which you do things will be different, right? Because the market's changing and you have to approach it differently, right? And so what I wanted to do is I wanted to be in the top 5 wholesalers in the nation before I ever developed and showed people how to do it, right? I wanted to prove to myself that I could play in the big leagues before I would teach it. And we're officially there, obviously. And so I'm excited. I think that we're obviously going to always be pivoting and showing people as things change because we're doing it, right? So not only are we teaching it every day, we are still to this day probably in the top 3 wholesalers in the entire nation.
I love that. Yeah. And I love that you have that integrity because coming into this space from building companies for over 20 years before I even posted my first thing on social, I was like, oh my gosh, there's all these people talking about this, that, and this, and they're in their first flip, or they have 3 rental properties, or they've been in business for 4 years, and now they're talking, and I'm just like, what is this? And I, like you, I mean, I said no to so many different things in creating an educational program until it was actually Brennan Burchard that told me once. He said, all that information that you, like everything you're thinking about everyone else, why don't you create something that competes with it? Because people are going to notice the difference. Yeah. And so I, like you, had to kind of flip that too, to say, okay, let's do it. Yeah. Reluctantly.
And I love that. I think it's so powerful, right? And I really love that there's people like you too in the space of leadership and coaching that, it's not just about the check, right? Like, we built some awesome companies, and I'm totally cool not doing education. I could live a really cool life. But our purpose is to serve and to help people, right? And I really believe that if we can, make a living by doing that and change people's lives, then that's obviously really cool.
Yeah, super cool. I love it. And I love that you're doing this. There's very few people that I can recommend. I told you I had Tark on the show. Love what he's doing. Totally different than what you're doing. But I love how you serve, how you show up. And I think that people are going to be very well served if they join your program and what you're doing.
I appreciate that. Yeah.
Highly recommend that for anyone looking to get into wholesaling. Now, we have one final question. Okay. So final question we always ask is, obviously the name is Generation Wealth. Mm-hmm. What does wealth at this point in your life mean to you? Yeah, I love that question. It'll definitely probably change over time, Of course.
I think right now it's all about you have all these different areas of life. We have, physically, spiritually, emotionally, relationally, and financially, right? Like the 5 kind of main pillars. Mm-hmm. And I've been trying for about a decade now. It's like, I think Ed Milet said one time, and I know you run the Ed Milet show, right? I want to say it was him that said, you can't be a 10 in all 5 at the same time. So if you're at an 8 financially, you might be at a 4 spiritually, or a 7 physically, or a 2 relationally, or, so you have these different ones, right? And so my mission, I think wealth, is how can I be as close to a 10 as I possibly can in every pillar, and because it's, how do you be a well-rounded human being? Right. And Tony Robbins talks about that, the work-life integration, right? Mm-hmm. How can I be well-rounded, where I'm crushing it financially, but I'm also crushing it physically in the gym. Yeah. I'm crushing it spiritually. I'm good with my creator, right? Whoever that, is for people watching. For me, it's obviously God, right? I have that relationship dialed in. Mm-hmm. I have my monogamous relationships dialed in, right? I'm a good friend. I'm a good fiance. I'm a good whatever, And how can I do all of that simultaneously? I think that is wealth, right? Because if there's been times I've had a couple Lamborghinis. I mean, and that doesn't bring happiness. I learned that at a really young age, right? I'm
glad you mentioned that.
Oh man, you have to figure out how to have more than just that. Yeah. Because if you're gonna sacrifice everything in your life, which I've done, right, to go achieve success financially, you're gonna be miserable if you don't have any of the other pillars. So I don't know that I'll ever be able to get to a 10 in every area. But if I could get to an 8 or, whatever in every area, I'd be really happy.
So much wisdom in that answer. Thank you for sharing that. I can't tell you how many people think that the definition of success is acquiring the thing. And it's not until you have it. And I don't think they always understand this, because they're like, oh, that's really nice to say you had the Lamborghini and it didn't bring you happiness. But I think it's worth sharing. I always share the story. I don't know if I've actually shared it on the podcast, but that I went to buy a Bentley way back, early 2000s. That was the car that I had wanted. And I realized at that moment that I could either stroke a check and buy this car, or I could donate a building to a nonprofit. And we all know what I did. Yeah. And it was at that moment that I realized that if I would have drove the car off the lot, it's a dopamine hit. It's happiness, and that's fleeting. But creating true fulfillment, something that lives beyond you, something that you can contribute to beyond you, is going to have real sustainability in fulfillment, not just happiness. So I love that. I love that you shared that, because I think if people go after that, if they go after real estate to just acquire assets to make money, they'll really miss the point of what it takes to build a rich life.
Agreed 1,000,000%. The hunt is better than the kill.
Oh, it's so true. Yeah, it's so true.
Yeah.
That's why you said if you lost it all tomorrow, you'd be excited. I think everyone should pay attention to that.
Gives me goosebumps to think about.
I just have them too. I have them too because it's way more exciting. Like getting the book deal, writing the book, getting the book out was way more exciting. Then, and obviously I always say I caution people because what'll happen is you then get destination addiction.
Sure.
And this is also a real addiction that a lot of entrepreneurs and high performers have, is that they're never happy. And I think you can stretch and grow while being happy. But it is an art. And it took me a long, long time to figure it out, is to not have this destination addiction that once you achieve one thing, you're on to the next thing, to be able to be grateful, be in the moment, be present, and you can still stretch and grow. It's not either or.
That's wealth.
That's wealth.
You know, if you can figure that out, if you can figure out how to play the game.
It's hard.
And yeah,
I struggle every day.
I do too, you know. But there is no destination. Because the moment you get there, it changes.
It absolutely does.
So you have to be really careful. I'm so on board with what you're talking about, you know. How do you have it all? You know?
I know. And how do you try to go after it all, but not be unhappy, right? Like if you were a 5, an 8, a 10, in all of these 5 buckets, some people would focus every day that, I'm only a 5.
Sure.
As opposed to just understanding it's part of the journey. And it's more about that journey to get to where you're going than if you ever achieve it. And I think we miss that oftentimes in life.
Almost every day, I think. You know, I think it's about, when you lay your head on your pillow at night, did you give it everything you had in every area? Did you just absolutely give everything you had to your relationships? Did you just pour out in your relationships? Did you pour out at work? Did you just pour out, spiritually? Did you get on your hands and knees? Did you play all out, or did you lay your head on the pillow at night thinking, man, I could have done better, right? And obviously we can always do better, but I think you have to be honest with yourself. Did I give it everything I could have today?
Yeah.
Not my potential tomorrow or my potential a year from now, but today with what I have and where I'm at, did I give it my all? And if I gave it my all, then I have to go to bed at night being grateful.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much. Tell everyone how they can find you, where they can get more info on the program.
At Austin Zaback is my Instagram and all my social media. And then you can go to www.flippinsimple.com to look into that. Flippin' without the G.
I love that name. We'll link all that up in the show notes. We could talk for hours. Thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate your time and sharing.
I really appreciate you. And again, it was an honor to be here.
All right, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in to another episode. And if you love this episode, I'm asking you for one huge favor. Share it. Tag me on social at Candy Valentino, or if you thought of someone during this episode who might benefit from the content, text it to them, send it to them. Make sure that you are tagging your friends in the comments if you see it on social. I would be so grateful if we could get this out into more hands, more ears, and to more people in the world. Okay, that's it for today. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you next time on Generation Wealth.